Calgary is a huge base for fintech companies right now. Like you have financial, you have Zayzima, you have health, you have
Mm-hmm.
OneBest, you have Finofo. So I mean, Calgary's coming into the fintech scene is like really on fire right now.
Welcome to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast, where we sit down with tech founders to break down how they scale, pivot, and grow. I'm your host, Gabrielle Walthers. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast. We are joined today by Prateek, who is the co-founder of Finofo, a fintech company here in Calgary, Alberta, which is very exciting. I don't think we've had a Calgarian-based company on the show yet. We've barely had Canadian companies on the show, so we're very excited to have a local with us. So thank you, Prateek. I want you to just talk a little bit about what founding Finofo looked like for you and kind of what inspired you to get into the fintech space and really what drove you to kind of solve the problem that Finofo is solving today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'll have to rewind back a little bit. So, how did I get into Finofo? If you really think about, how my life progressed, starting from coming to Canada with literally $500 and not knowing where I'm going to be living next month and not really knowing what's going to happen in my life, with one dream that, hey, I just need to move to Canada and figure out what's going to happen with very limited financial resources and any help that can be provided to me. I decided that I'm going to take that leap and come to Canada. My background was mainly in hospitality business, mainly selling hotel room nights and event spaces for a large chain of hotels. From that point on, came to Canada, continued working for Fairmont Hotels over here, did their leadership development program and student work experience program. And, great time, of course, spent time in Jasper, spent time in Banff, spent time in Royal York Hotel. And from that point on, while I really loved working in hotels and my dream was always to sort of work for a consultancy that would allow me to open new hotels. And that was what I wanted to do at that point in time, and decided that, okay, well, the life is progressing well. I figured out a way to settle myself in Canada and was looking for a change. And then that was when I met my now wife, then girlfriend, Monica, and that was in Banff, and decided that, well, she is from Edmonton and I'm going to have to follow her. So fell in love and followed her to Edmonton and stayed in Edmonton. And that was when I sort of got a really amazing opportunity with TD Direct Investing. And I was always involved in personal trading myself, being a very analytical person right from the get-go. And they gave me a chance. I got into an interview, and that was my first foray into finance, in my opinion. And from that point on, decided that I wanted to learn more about finance and specialize in finance. So decided to continue studying more and decided to do an MBA specializing in finance with University of Alberta, completely part-time, where TD helped a little bit in sponsoring me to go get that further education. But from that point on, I just knew that, this is something that I love to do. I loved trading. I loved understanding financial markets, loved understanding how companies actually go do an IPO. How do you really look into financial statements, value any specific asset or derivative or any other security that you're sort of looking at. And that world really it was just a candy for me to continue being more curious and continue learning more in finance. What prompted me to start Finofo was taking this journey forward and learn, I was working for an institutional trading firm where I was managing currency exposures for businesses where mid-market CFOs, they're buying things globally from different suppliers. And, they have payables in a different currency. They also are selling globally. So their receivables could be in a different currency. And the fluctuations between currencies sort of make you push to understand how these fluctuations are going to impact your operating margins and profit margins. And that's what I was helping. And while working in that industry, very quickly realized that structurally it's very deficient. This is one of the last frontiers where software has not really crept in. People are still making these decisions manually by talking to their bankers, by talking to their non-bank service providers. saw an opportunity that, there should be something that we can build in the space where I started with a very simple algorithm or tool that I wrote for my customers, and they loved it. Like, they provided some early feedback on, okay, well, this is way different than what we've been used to. We can understand our currency exposures, and we can get some immediate recommendations. So you're really like bringing some digital tool to this problem. That was not really that was the genesis of the idea sort of baking in that, okay, well, I should do something in this space and continue building. I really didn't jump into it by building Finofo. I continued working for a venture capital firm. I was working for a fund of funds where I was investing money, Alberta's money, provincial money into different venture capital funds, bringing them over here to Alberta to invest in local startup ecosystem. From that point on, like when you're exposed to so much innovation happening around you, you end up deciding that, okay, well, this is something that you absolutely, the startup bug sort of like bites you, and then you start looking back, okay, was there an idea that I was worth thinking about? Should I just like pick it up and see if I can work on that idea? And that's what started Finofo. So Finofo right now is a payments automation platform. We help businesses send international payments, manage their accounts payable, help them stand up different accounts in multiple different currencies all over the world so that they can provide local bank details to their customers as a better payment method for their customers to pay them. Instead of asking their customer to send you a wire by providing your RBC bank account details or your CIBC bank account details, your bank is in Canada, right? So you're asking your customer to wire that money to you, and that wire costs them $40 to $50. So we slashed that $40 to $50 to $0. And of course, on the other side, when you want to pay your international vendors, we've reduced that cost of 40 to 50, you sending that money back to $0. So that's the power of innovation in the space. You can move money at lightning speed. You can settle these transactions a lot faster. You can hold on to your cash a lot more and be able to automate this entire function of managing all the invoices that are coming to you and so on. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to how I found it.
No, that's great. I really like that you brought in your own personal story and your journey coming to Canada, living in Edmonton, because I think that and this is why I think it's so cool to talk to founders, because a lot of what led them to the industry that they're in and the company that they've started is much more, a lot of the times, much more personal than it is, a business decision alone. So I like it when people are able to link kind of what led them to where they are today with kind of the story of their life. Because that's what's real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, anyone that I've talked to be honest, it's, what their origin stories are. I believe that there are two types of founders out there, that people who are driven by, some sort of a vision that they got, right? Like, okay, I want to solve this specific problem and that's all I want to do. And there are other kinds of investors who are not really driven so much by vision. Of course, there's some component to it, but they are also driven by the opportunity. So they understand that I like to call them an investor-like type of founder. So they look at the opportunity, they understand, okay, there's a gap in the market and this gap can be fulfilled. So there's no crazy vision driving them to solve that need in the market. They just recognize that there's a need in the market. And if they were not building it themselves, they would be investing in that specific need to be fulfilled.
Yeah, and we've had a couple guests on that have spoken to that as well. They fell into the industry that they're in or fell into the offering that they have because of huge gaps they saw in their previous roles in other large companies, whether it be a bank or, the Amazons of the world, you know what I mean? And so you eliminate, I think, a lot of guessing when you do it that way, which is really great. You're able to be like, well, I know 100% that this issue exists because I see it and I've worked within it every day for however many years. So I think that's, like the best way to do. You're like, this is a surefire solution. Like, I know that I'm not guessing. I'm not making any assumptions. I know the data's there. I know that the issue's there. I've seen it. I've worked within it. And now
before you even find product market fit, you have to find founder market fit. So the founder should know about the market that they're trying to build in. Of course, it's not a requirement by any means, right? So, you can build any space that you put your mind to. But at the end of the day, when you're, presenting yourself and the opportunity to someone else, just an idea. And that's how we got in as well, right? We came in, most of the companies that you might talk to would tell you how difficult it was for them to raise money and so on. Similar for us, but we started without a product, right? And we raised money without a product completely. So it's difficult to do, especially in the Canadian landscape, but not unheard of course, but very common in the US, for example.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I think this is something that's geographic specific because, like I said, we haven't had an Alberta-based company on the show yet. In the Canadian landscape specifically, I'm curious kind of what, beyond meeting your wife, living in Edmonton, being in that financial sector in Alberta already, was there anything beyond just situational circumstances that led you to build your company in Alberta and Calgary specifically, as opposed to, fintech hubs like Toronto, Vancouver?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question. And we keep talking about it with my co-founder every time, right? So my co-founder is actually from Montreal. When we were thinking about, okay, well, we need to really build a hub somewhere. We started remote. This was during late 2022. COVID was still out there. We raised money in beginning of 2023. That's when our pre-seed round of $1.7 million closed. We were still working remote, and we always thought, we need to come in person and build our office. And there were two options, right? Either we go to Toronto or we go to Calgary, So my co-founder hated Toronto, and it was a little bit more convenient for me to be really close to Edmonton over here because my wife's family's there. And we both decided that, we should move to Calgary. And there are other reasons other than proximity and convenience. It's also the government, we actually saw it firsthand. I used to work for Alberta Enterprise Corporation, where I was investing provinces' money into different venture capital funds. And I've been involved in different levels of government. And I saw firsthand that people are in all levels of government over here are sort of trying really hard to make Calgary into a big tech hub. So when people with incumbent industries are also doing the same, all levels of government are working towards a specific goal that they want to achieve, things happen, right? So you need a level of collaboration from all different parts of ecosystem to be able to make something, right? So I like to call it that how did Silicon Valley really come to be, which was a center of influence where, everything is available. You have capital, you have talent, you have market, right? Everything is available. And that's why people love to build their companies over there because, people feel energized that, there are amazing folks building amazing things over there. And you've got to build that environment. It's not just about providing capital. It's also about accepting the solutions that are getting built in your local ecosystem. Big, larger companies, oil and gas companies should be. That's what sort of prompted us that, hey, there's some sort of concerted effort going into making Calgary into a huge tech hub, and we should be in this space. And it's the right time to be in the space. So yeah, let's move to Calgary. And that's what has been seen. When you mentioned Vancouver, right? Calgary was in last year. The Calgary companies raised a lot more venture capital than Vancouver. And it's a statistic that it has never happened in history. And only last year was the first time that Calgary sort of leapfrogged Vancouver.
Yeah. And I also think that there's a benefit to being able to anticipate the development of Calgary in the tech space and being able to be at the forefront of it and kind of have your authority built before you see other big fintech companies moving in and setting up shop and expanding their market to Calgary and stuff like that. So
yeah, there are tons of fintech companies, and Calgary is a huge base for fintech companies right now. You have financial, you have Zayzim, you have health, you have OneBest, you have Finofo. So Calgary's coming into the fintech scene is really on fire right now, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I agree with you. Why would you live in Toronto when you could live in Calgary?
Exactly.
There's the added benefit of being here.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so I want to focus now on kind of your growth to date with your company. And I know you mentioned you guys started and went to market in 2023, correct? Yeah. So in the past couple of years, when did you guys experience the most growth? And what do you think was the secret sauce of making that happen for you guys? And what did you think that you did differently that allowed you to have some successes early on?
Yeah, it was quite a journey, I would say, right? So we launched a product in August of 2023. That's when we announced our pre-seed round as well. We got featured on TechCrunch, not really by accident, of course. Like we worked really hard to get ourselves featured on TechCrunch and sold the story to the reporters, and TechCrunch works that way, as you know. So with that sort of attention, we definitely got a little bit of influx of customers, and I already come from this industry, so I already had customers on the beta that were using the product as well. We just continued sort of learning from after releasing the product publicly, after getting these, we got a little bit lucky in the beginning for sure with getting a lot of this attention. A lot of big customers, mid-market customers started using our product immediately. And that proved really useful for us because we always wanted to build for the mid-market segment. And how I like to sort of define mid-market as any company that's at least 50 employees and up to 1,000 employees. Yeah, we got lucky in the beginning, but we knew that this was as I like to call it, it was a curse in disguise. The people have to work hard to get their first few customers. As you know, you might have heard from a lot of different folks that are building tech products specifically, and it's not really easy. This concept of product market fit and so on. And for us, it was right away, you have a few amazing customers that are providing you feedback. And that was useful for us. And I got a little bit comfortable thinking that, this is easy. I'm going to be able to just replicate and get as many customers as I need and achieve this specific threshold of goals that I have to grow the company and then raise our next round and be out there immediately. And of course, that's not how it all happened. If I look back, the product that we launched in August, I can't even think back into selling that product at all. It felt shameful. And that's how it goes. The early products are like this. And yeah, we improved quite a lot from that point on, right? We learned that, okay, what matters a lot more for our mid-market customer. They wanted more internal controls to make sure that earlier it was all about, okay, well, how can we make the payments a lot faster? How can we get it done in 2 clicks versus 25 clicks that they're using in their banking platform, right? How can we make sure that everything moves as rapid as possible? But then later we learned that, okay, that's not really a priority for our customer. They're okay clicking 5 times. That's fine, as long as what matters for them is security. What matters to them is compliance. And that's where the product direction started going further, that we wanted to build one of the most modular internal control approval builder system that exists in Canada. We expanded to the US as well, so we can actually onboard entities not just in Canada, but also in the US. So it was a lot of iteration, to be honest, right? So it was a lot of iteration to understand what pain points do we really want to focus on, and brutal lot of prioritization, because you will be thrown a lot of different ideas, hey, maybe we can take a product here in this direction. I just talked to this customer, he needs this specific thing. Should I be building that immediately, right? So, yeah, I mean, from a growth perspective, we grew from those early customers to now serving more than 200 customers. Now we're going a little bit downstream. So the number of customers is going to increase rapidly, because earlier it was all about mid-market, and now we recognize that this product is useful for small business as well. So we came up with a small business plan with $29 a month. You can send as many international payments as you want. When you send an international wire, you need to send money to the US right now. You go to your RBC Express bank account and you pay that. You're paying $30 to send that transfer, right? So that's $30 just to send one transfer. And we're talking about unlimited payments to US, Canada, Europe, because South America, anywhere in the globe for free, included in my $9 plan. So that's the plan that we came up with. Recently, we recognize that small businesses paying too much to banks, and these banks are paying dividends. Their goal is not to really think so much in the best interest of their customers. So.
Yeah, and that's a group of people that really are experiencing that pain point that you're solving to the nth degree, like way more, because smaller operations, smaller revenue, those costs are
Yeah,
going to be such a higher
I would,
percentage of their just
I would say
everything that
that
you're
people are
bringing in. Yeah.
unaware because, you start a business, you're immediately just like getting talk to someone that, you have no clue about, perhaps, let's say, finances, right? So you're going to be like, okay, let's open a bank account at RBC or CIBC, and we'll go from there, right? Whatever bank that you bank with your personal banking, and you're going to go open a business bank account over there. That's good. Banks are amazing institutions for capital market solutions, for lending, for credit and everything like that. But when it comes to payments and the payments infrastructure, they are nowhere close to what fintechs can do. And fintech is just starting in Canada. Like we hardly get to, in B2C space, you have Neo Financial, you have Coco, but in B2B space, you can't really name that many companies that are actually making their mark in Canada. Only a very few
Hmm.
number of companies that are still like operating in the B2B. B2B is, I would say, less than 20 basis points of market share in Canada. So banks are
Yeah.
still controlling more than 95% of the market share here.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. Are you anticipating a larger shift away from banks as more companies, or even as your company grows and companies like yours kind of take more of that business, and or people kind of get their eyes opened and they're realizing, hey, this isn't the only way to do this anymore. If I go this alternate route, work with these other companies, work with Finofo, I'm not going to be, killing myself to try and pay these freaking fees right at the beginning, especially for small businesses. Yeah.
Yeah, fees, convenience, reduce the power. The purpose of software generally is to add value by either helping you save money or by helping you save time, and actually both. And if the software cannot really achieve that, then it's not really good, right? So what we have learned over here in Canada was that businesses have now like build their processes around the technology provided by banks, not the other way around. So not like that banks are actually building technology to serve the needs or the evolving needs of businesses. It's actually the other way around that, okay, well, my bank can only provide this, so I need to change my process to accommodate with the technology that's provided to us. So that's complete, reverse sort of value driver, if you really think about it in that way, that people are changing the way that they act and behave by looking at what technological strengths do they have provided to them by their financial institutions. So we wanted to, of course, change that, and there is a wave going on, especially in the US in the B2B fintech space. And we see that, people are getting a little bit more curious about, okay, well, what else exists over here? In the US, the culture is a little bit different with businesses because, they're not really, of course, you have a lot of large banks in the US as well, but you have more than 30,000 financial institutions over there. So that component of long build loyalty does not exist. It's not as strong as what it is in Canada, right? Like, when we talk about financial institutions over here, we feel pretty proud that, okay, well, our grandfathers used to bank with RBC, so that sort of tradition is continuing, and it's very difficult to break that tradition. And now companies in the B2C space are doing really well. You might have heard about a company called Wealthsimple. Wealthsimple is providing you a Robinhood-like trading account where you can buy securities, and now you're recognizing, okay, well, there's a better way to do it. Why do I have to go to a bank and open a direct investing account and then pay
Yeah.
$1 fee for for buying some stocks? Like you wanted to invest $40 in a specific stock, you ended up paying
Yeah.
$10 a fee. Like
Yeah.
that's not the innovation
Yeah.
and the technology is not moving this forward, right? So things are changing for sure, and we do see that the fintech is going to continue taking a lot more market share. And I do have a long-term thesis about all this, of course, right? So I personally believe that financial institutions can never actually achieve the velocity that it takes to understand customer needs and what they really want, right? So from a user experience standpoint or customer facing solutions, it's always going to be fintechs that are going to take the charge over there and going to build better solutions. As financial institutions have a role to play, which is to provide that infrastructure, the pipes. Right? So you cannot build a fintech company without a bank. So even though I'm maybe bashing or sounding like bashing the bank, but I'm only bashing the parts that they are, worse at. They're amazing at building that infrastructure, providing that solidarity, providing that reliance upon, if your deposits are safe in a specific bank and so on. So I mean, they have a role to play, which is to continue to be fitter or the
Yeah.
infrastructure of future finance, the way that we will all move money and the way that we see our relationship with money going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good point you bring up. They have a role to play, but the role they have to play isn't every role. And I think that's the important distinction is that there are spaces for folks to come in and innovate and disrupt some of those archaic systems that the banks kind of have ironed down, right? Even just down to, picking your financial institution. How many people, and I know this is kind of like a pillar of a lot of banks marketing nowadays of who picked your bank? Your parents probably did. And it goes to kind of all of the that consumers have around interacting with these financial institutions and all of the different problems they bring to the banks, not realizing that there's other organizations out there that are going to be better suited to do what they're looking to do for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just it's it's something that happens in phases, right? So right now, what fintech phase is going through is we're building that awareness and we're building that customer awareness with the customers. There are better solutions out there, but also there's a role to play for fintechs as well. That how can they actually remain reliable in the space, right? So you might have heard about cryptocurrency platforms going complete berserk, and people losing their money and so on. Like that sort of takes a big. Banks can just point you at those bad examples and be like, oh, this is what happens when you bring technology in the
Yeah.
space, and don't want everything to be crazy fast and everything, right? So but those are bad examples, and that's why I do like to, if we are the stewards of changing the way that businesses, people are going to transact with each other, then we need to be better at providing better solutions and be reliable as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, for sure. And with the last few minutes here, I'm curious to hear about what of your challenges have come up with for scaling, and what has your approach been, I guess, to working around those challenges and trying to find solutions that work. And kind of piggybacking onto that, I'm also curious to know from a founder perspective, is there something or several things that are on your plate that are your responsibility right now just because they have to be, that you'd like to be offloaded somewhere else? Because I think that's an interesting piece as well, is all the various different hats they have to wear. And I think for a lot of them, they're like, honestly, a big pain point is maybe it's sales and marketing, maybe it's talent acquisition. And a lot of that has to do with the founder being like, I have to do all of this and I don't want to. And I think that we'd be much more effective if I could be able to, disseminate these tasks and, set up my team this way and that type of thing. So yeah, just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so I believe in the theory of the zone of excellence, right? You there are some tasks that provide you that energy, right? Where you sort of feel good that these are your zones of excellence. And there are tasks where no one can outcompete you out there, right? So there are certain areas. Whereas with us being founders, we have to do everything. So there's no picking and choosing which tasks do we like to take on and so on. I also believe in the theory, which probably you might have heard about. The Airbnb's co-founder sort of mentioned in a Y Combinator interview that people are sort of bringing in middle managers in there as they scale and grow, and they become a little bit aloof from the process of building their business. And he doesn't believe in that concept at all. He thinks that we should always be turned on. We should always be completely deep into the weeds, and he likes to call it founder mode, right? So you need to be in the founder mode to be able to build the business that you want to build. Offloading sales and marketing, which is one of the biggest sort of things that are the revenue drivers of your business. It's totally, you cannot really just offload it to someone. What you're looking for are folks that can add leverage to you, right? That's what we believe as well, that we want people who are independent thinkers, who can do the level of research, and we're bringing that technical chops to the table to be able to add leverage to our efforts, right? And that's how I like to think of this specific scale. I'm never gonna be completely off anything. I want to be involved, and I want to build what I'm building, and I want to be involved in the product. I want to be involved in sales. I want to be involved in marketing. I want to be involved in how people perceive about Finofo in terms of figuring it all out and the entire legal process of. I think
No, I think that's a great That's a great piece to bring up about how there's not a ton I want off my plate. I want to be aware of everything that's going on. I want to know what's happening at every stage of the funnel and involved in some degree so that you're, in the know. I think that's a good piece to bring up. A lot of times when founders conceptualize what taking things off their plate means, they think, fully giving it responsibility, outcome, everything to somebody else, being disconnected. And I don't think that's ever really the solution. I think that the more the founder is really in tune with the functionality of their company and the ebb and flow of the growth journey, the more effective that they're going to be. And also the power of founder-led sales and marketing is so effective. So I think a lot of folks kind of shoot themselves in the foot in that way, where they're like, I'm going to give this to a subject matter expert. Yeah, that's the right thing to do, but you need to be, disseminating that in a way that leverages your effectiveness in those spaces too. Otherwise, you're giving it to someone else to just watch it kind of fizzle out. And so I applaud you for that. I think that's the right.
Playbooks are getting rewritten at this point in time with AI,
Totally.
as right? So
yeah.
People are also recognizing even the subject matter experts do not know what's going on in the world at this point in time. Like I was chatting with the CTO of Cement. This is another scale up from Calgary just last night. And he was mentioning that they hired a 15-year-old intern, and they generally make their interns go on stage and exactly showcase what they worked on during the summer to the entire company. He built something that was freaking phenomenal from a GTM perspective, right? It used different sort of possible AI tools that allowed them to really map out the entire market that they want to serve. What personalization do they want to? All that lead scoring is done by a specific script and a specific complete tool that is custom built for that company's purpose, and it's done by a 15-year-old, right? And whereas so they had to let go a lot of people because of this. So playbooks are getting rewritten at this point in time for sure.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And I think in a lot of industries, I think mine, yours, there's tons. And I think it's good. I think that things need to be shaken up. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what the future has. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Prateek, for joining us. That's most of our time. I'll open the floor to you if there's anything that has been left unsaid. If you want to give our viewers kind of a send-off message from yourself, you're free to do that. The floor is yours.
Thanks for really enjoyed chatting with you and learning a little bit more about your organization as well. To the listeners and viewers, Finofo is actively hiring at this point in time. We're aggressively growing. And if there are any listeners out there that are interested in learning more about Finofo, they can go onto our website at finofo.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Prateek. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a new episode of CTRL ALT GAB. Please make sure you follow along as we talk to tech founders and dive into their business and their scaling journey. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening to the CTRL ALT GAB podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one.